Sparkso has the vision to build technology that helps communities connect. Their first product is an event ticketing platform that makes it easy for event producers to sell tickets directly on their brand's or organization's website. With Sparkso, it is easy to create a ticket checkout experience with multiple ticket options and add photos and videos to a customized event details page. If you're an event producer, check out Sparkso, SPARXO at sparkso.com/thecolorofsuccess/. Mention the color of success during sign up to receive 50% off Sparkso fees for the first event you host using Sparkso ticketing. From nightclubs to yoga retreats, brands that care about bringing people together to create great experiences, trust Sparkso. Welcome to the Golden Crane Award-winning Color of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie J. Wong. Chandetka is a Laotian American professional bodybuilder and became one of the most notable Asian Americans in the sport, winning titles and landing a major sponsorship. However, he suffered an injury which led to an addiction to painkillers, depression, anxiety, and alcoholism, and losing his sponsorship. He worked on his recovery from addiction and made a comeback in his 40s, earning an IFBB Pro card and placed 7th at the 2016 Mr. Olympia contest. He has since retired from the sport, co-founding the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame to recognize and inspire other Laotian athletes, and launching the C4 podcast, Southeast Asian Athlete Achievement for Adversity. He is currently a bodybuilding and nutrition consultant living in South Elgin, Illinois. Hi, Ko. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I mean, when you told me about your journey, it is absolutely amazing. And I'm wondering, I touched the tip of the iceberg in your introduction, but could you share more details about how the heck did you become a bodybuilder?
How did I become a bodybuilder? Well, I guess the first question is, how did my family, move to the US? It wasn't like we were just sitting around one day and says, hey, how about we move to the US? Unfortunately, at that time, the war was going on. And the communist government was taking over the Lao Royal Army. Now, my father was Lieutenant Colonel for the Lao Royal Army. So it was pretty much either he was going to be sentenced to prison, or I don't know, I hope, or he's killed, right? So we had to plan an escape. And because my father had worked with the U.S. military during that time, we had connections on how to get us over to the U.S. quickly. That was 1975, I believe. I think we didn't even stay long in Thailand. Like a lot of refugees stay in Thailand for months, sometimes years. We came over right away to Western Ohio. So that was 75 to 76. And 76, we landed in Elgin, Illinois, or South Elgin. And, I'm 5 years old, and this is a brand new world to me, right? Like I've never seen snow. I don't think I've seen trains.
I was going to say, that's a very interesting place to land. Was there a military base there or something?
Our sponsor, like I said, was from Western Ohio, and I guess they found my father work in Elgin, and all of a sudden we were amongst the first families to move there, and then other families followed suit. But like I said, we came in 75, 76. There wasn't a wave of Laotians not until 79, 80. So we kind of had like a 5-year head start. As you can see, in my case, I had a head start in English and being American, right? So at first, being the only Asian kid in school or 5-year-old running around town, I got picked on. I was different, right? I mean, derogatory names, just getting bullied, getting beat up. And then eventually that's how I got into bodybuilding. But I just, we had stuff done to our house. I remember one time they spray painted our cars, like "Go home, chink." Yeah. And and my dad, and I'm thinking like, why are we still going? Why are you still going to work? Why are you still taking to school? Because I was embarrassed, and it's like, I got a job. I got a job to take care of. I can't handle you know, I can't let this bother me. And I think I kind of got that with him growing up, like not letting, sometimes kind of being very tough and stubborn and not letting things, like I would get ready for a bodybuilding show and I'd be really focused and intense, and the world was silent. So, but yeah, I was just getting tired of getting beat up on. I was the smallest all the way up, in the high school. I don't even think I was that 98-pound weakling, because I don't think I hit it. But,
yeah, I mean, I've been small, but I imagine, being the only Asian or one of the only Asians at that early age, that really does impact the way that people are comparing the kids around you, right? The comparison point is a white male, and you just don't have that quote unquote luxury of being able to find other people that look like you.
yeah, always getting picked last in school. Gym was my favorite class because I could somewhat excel and do pretty well. But I had a hard time, learning the language. I'm trying to learn. I had just started learning Laos, learning Laotian. So then at 4 years old, we get to the States. I had to switch, learn English. Like I said, the bullying part of it, getting picked on, I just got tired of it. And one day my older brothers bought a weight set, one of these, I don't know if you remember those Kmart weight sets. They're made of plastic and little benches. And they bought that to start working out. And I was around 11, 12. And they didn't invite me to work out. They kind of told me, I was still too young. But when they left, when nobody was watching, I'd sneak down there and start working out. Eventually that got into, working out at school, and then working out at like finally a commercial gym at around, the age of 18. But going back to your question, that is, yes, how I became, that is what got me interested in bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm. This is a very rich history, right? And I think these, like you talk about, the adversity, the racism, the bullying, and honestly, that is an epidemic in itself, because kids can be very, very mean. And then you add this intersectionality of your identity, and it's a recipe, right, for mean-spirited behavior. So, one thing that you shared with me is that your parents wanted you to be an engineer. So, and which is pretty common in a lot of Asian American families. So you had this interest in bodybuilding, weightlifting, and then there was this encouragement to become an engineer. How did you kind of navigate those waters?
Well, the math stuff, like in school, all that, it just came easy for me. Like I didn't try. I like slept in class. I was late. I was always late for class. I don't know if that was me just trying to prove a point. And I'd come in late for a test and I'd be the first to finish, and I'd still get the high score. But as you can see, like being a bodybuilder was like, it challenged me, and it was weird because I guess I would have had maybe an easier road had I stuck with engineering, and who knows where that may have led. But I was developing muscle at the age of 17, 18. Everybody noticed the difference in me. Everybody was like, do you compete? And I like my first competition as far as like when I was 19. But it was like the challenging aspect. Bodybuilding was, from the very beginning, even especially from my family, you can't do it. You're too small. That's from within. So that was hard. That one I held on to the longest. Like still my relationship with my mother till today is like, gosh, I wish you would have believed in me, and that's something that I do with my kids is like, I will not continue that cycle. If my kids want to do this or do that, I will support them as long as they're happy. But engineering, it didn't challenge me. And I didn't want to be normal. I could have been, I could have a nice life and then, you know, I got married, children, house, car. I just chose to go, you know, the road less traveled. Like you can't do it motivated me a lot. But also at that time, there weren't that many Asian bodybuilders. And I was amongst the first in the area. So everybody was like, man, look at this Asian kid, you know, like, and I was beating guys that outweighed me by 100 pounds.
Wow.
So it's like, not only am I, you know, just winning my weight division, because I could have stayed in the same weight division and been fine. I always wanted to go at the end of the show. Everybody will show there's an overall, which takes all the weight class winners. Like there's 5 or 6 of them now. Mm-hmm. And I was in the middle. I was a middleweight. And then we'd all, you know, we'd fight for the overall title. And that's where I took that's what was, that meant a lot to me, to be able to be, you know, at 170 some pounds and then beating guys that were, that were bigger. It proved my point, like, to my dad. My dad was like, you're too small. And I remember telling them in the beginning, it's not about the size, it's the quality. And I have better, it's not having the biggest physique, it's about having the better physique. And I proved that by being a smaller guy, but always winning the overall titles. Yeah, I guess it's a challenge from engineering, and there's nothing wrong with it. It wasn't for me.
Well, it sounds like you found meaning and purpose. And I think the other thing is representation. And maybe at that time you didn't know it, but that was a huge step forward for you and to show yourself and other people and your family that, hey, you can do this, and Asian Americans can represent in a sport where, you know, we are underrepresented. Mm-hmm. So you talked a lot about the challenges, or you were alluding to it, especially with your mom. I'm wondering if you can if you're comfortable, unpack that a little bit. Like how did that impact your relationship, and how is it now?
Again, just the belief factor that you can't do it. And, you know, she'd pick on me about, I'd always get your physique is ugly. Okay. But imagine her saying that in the native tongue. Okay. But it pretty much was saying your body is ugly. And I took that to heart. Like, it's not ugly or disgusting. I'm not mean, and I'm not trying to be. She thought of all the negatives that could come with having a big muscular physique, of a big man with muscles, how they could be intimidating and mean and scary looking. I guess I appeared that way to many people because I was always misinterpreted by being mean or scary. To me, it's my art, not just creating my physique. But her lack of support, it was just a constant, you know, after every show, every victory was never good enough, you know, until the final one. The final one was when I turned professional. And to her, that meant the end of my amateur career. So are you done now? That was the only time there was some sense of like, okay, he's finally done. But to me, that was a huge accomplishment, especially after being away for so long, having to be a parent to two of my kids. And I was working, like, I think I was driving a semi truck at the time and driving nights. And that was probably my best preparation. And in the beginning, I wanted that simple lifestyle. I wanted to live in California. I wanted to train in the morning, go lay out on the beach, you know, get my tan and work out all day long. And that didn't happen for me. I did better when things were more structured. So
yeah, and
go
ahead.
And today we're good. But it still had to come from my end. I had to let go. I held on. I didn't realize how much resentment I had, because it was always, you go into the gym today, comments, my appearance, because I like wearing those muscle type shirts, you know, you're gonna go like that. it's just after a while, it was just constant back and forth between us, you know, and I took so much, but then there are times when I kind of argued back, and which would make it worse. So,
Well,
and then
tell
I
me
just,
about that process of letting go, though, because a lot of people say that when there's this emotional component and possibly bordering on emotional abuse, so to speak, because telling your kid in general, aside from being a bodybuilder, that their body is ugly, right? That has some severe or could have some severe impact on your self-esteem. I mean, how did you work through that process of quote unquote letting go of that?
it was a long process. And it's something I just achieved just recently. And it wasn't like I did this in my 20s or 30s. It, I had to come from, I started seeing a therapist that had me look at my mother from her point of view, and how she was and how it affected her. Like one thing I understood, like when, you know, when me and my dad would celebrate the victory, and he's holding the trophy and he's taking pictures, my mom's in the kitchen and just cooking. And like, I never realized that maybe she wanted to be part of that. Like I never had her take a picture. I never included her in my victories, because when I won, it was just always, I came home and I was defensive right away. It's like, I won, instead of mom, you know, I'm really happy that we had a hard time just, you know, bonding, you know, but again, seeing it from her side and realizing like she spent a lot of time in the kitchen cooking, right? And it took me a long time to realize that that was her love language. You know,
Yes.
I used to get in trouble all the time. She used to whack me with a broom. I'd cry. And, you know, I'm crying. Then, you know, 15 minutes later, there'd be a plate of food. Come eat, you know, and never realizing that was her way of saying, I love you. While me, I just wanted, I love you. I'll support you. And I think that there was like the confusion there.
Yeah, there was a disconnect. And I think it sounds like not only I love you, but there was some apology mixed into that food as well as an ingredient, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
so,
the eggs taste the best then, though. I don't know why.
I mean, that was a special ingredient. They don't sell that at the store, you know? So, one of the things that really stuck out to me because I'm a substance abuse specialist, a substance abuse treatment specialist,
Oh, wow.
and you talked a lot about in presenting your story to me that an injury is kind of what led you towards addiction. Can you speak more to that journey? Because I think one, it's super courageous that you're going to talk about this, and two, it is so stigmatized to talk about this in general and in the Asian American community.
Well, yes, I was getting for a national level show, a pro qualifier, meaning if I win the show, I earn pro status. So it was a very big show. Everything was like all the stars were lined up for me. I had a really good sponsor. I had good support. The income that I got, there was no issue there. I was able to, they paid for my travels and hotels, and they even gave me like supplements, because it was a protein supplement company. And so like this was my best chance. And I was like, how would you say it? I was one of the front runners for the show. And I think it was about 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks out, I was doing a chest exercise, and I pressed, and all of a sudden I heard something pop. And so I put the bar away, and it hurt. I quit training for the day. The next day, I'm still in pain. So one of your buddies, you have a lot of buddies at the gym. Everybody wants to help you, right? So this guy came up to me, and we respect each other. I wouldn't say he was like, a bad guy that he did this to me or anything. But he just, hey, why don't you try this? It'll help you, deal with the pain and like get you through the contest. So of course, anything to help win the show. And again, it was like, what was it? Was it Vicodin or Percocet? but it was by a prescription. You know, you can get it with a prescription. So
Right.
the bottle came with somebody else's prescription, just not mine, right?
It's common.
So I started taking it, and hey, I'm able to train. Did not get, went to the end of the show, did not get, you know, the result that I wanted, but still, I didn't quit. Right? I mean, that macho attitude of like, I didn't quit. I got hurt, and I still, you know, I still competed. So I was very proud of that for some weird kind of way. But then I found out when the show was over and now I'm into a different phase of my lifting schedule, I was still calling this guy up and saying, hey, you know, I need some more of this stuff. I need some more of this stuff. And then I realized, like, if I, you know, one time I went to work and I left it at home, and I had like the worst, I got real sick, not understanding what was going on.
Go withdrawal.
That was my first taste of withdrawal, right? But to everyone else, I looked sick, you know, like there is something wrong with me. You should go home, right? You know, instead of going home, I'm driving, you know, 45 minutes to pick up some more painkillers.
So I think that's a really powerful point, because people don't necessarily realize that the dependence piece, right? You are you're craving. Those are severe cravings, and that dependence of your body actually seems to need it to alleviate those withdrawal symptoms. And that's what hooks people in, because they're like, it's not necessarily just the cravings. It's like, that'll temporarily make my body feel better, right? And let me just get rid of these feelings right now and kind of move on. And that is definitely a red flag when it comes to moving down that path of addiction. So, okay, so fast forward a little bit, you had that dependence, you kind of noticed that you were getting sick. What happened after that?
Well, my performance at my job was on the decline. I was getting sick a lot. I was leaving work early a lot. I had to do sometimes extra appearances for the company at gyms and stuff, like on some weeknights or weekends. And I'd be like the model, and I'd also sample out the protein. And I wasn't attending. You know, I wasn't visiting customers. And then when I actually found out about that, one day I made a phony schedule, and I didn't go to any of my customers. Of course, they called the customers and nobody saw me. So it was that point, you know, I got called in and says, you know, and they said we'd had to let you go. I wished, like you were talking about, right? I just wanted to feel normal. Near the end, it wasn't about getting high or feeling this way or that way. It was just, I got all these symptoms going on, and this was the only thing that cured it, that allowed me to be normal, that allowed me, you know, I was taking amounts that would knock people out just to wake me up, just to let me start my day.
Right. Just to get back to that baseline of functioning is what you're looking for.
Yeah. And I wish at that time, it was so new back then, and it was very looked down upon. It's not like today, where there probably could have been, like, I probably could have got some help and the company would have, like, here, we're going to send you here because you're worth that much to us. And the companies are saying that nowadays. We know you're sick. We want to help you get better. We're going to send you here. And it's like no judgment.
Right. Well, it's an opiate epidemic that's being acknowledged now, right? Back then, it's like, oh, and also the stigmatization of addiction was even worse back then than it is now.
Yeah, I can tell. Oh my God, who am I going to tell? And so it's like just that feeling inside of like not telling anyone. You know, we talk about the secrecy. Like the letting go part is such an amazing, is a type of a freedom that you get. So when you can finally tell somebody that you need help, it's probably one of the more, you know, you're in a sense surrendering, but you're actually your strength is on the rise. You know, when people see it the wrong way, like, no, you gave up, you asked for help. It's like, no, I was tired of tired of lying and just doing all the negative things that come along with being an addict.
Yeah, the deceit too, right? Is the phony
Mm-hmm.
schedule kind of stood out because
Yeah.
you're trying to almost fool people to think that you're okay or that you're showing up. And I think that's the other piece that defines when you have a full blown addiction is that it starts to negatively impact various aspects of your life, and it wasn't just work, right? There's the relationship piece, and not showing up
Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
when you need to do that. So, but I don't need names or anything, but how common was this among the folks, your gym buddies, the people that you were working with? Because I mean, it wasn't like this shady thing, like you were on a street corner and like when you were going to a dealer. I mean, this person seemed to say, okay, this has helped me, let try it.
It was at that time an elite group, right? I was one of the top favorites to turn professional. So, it was accessible to me. It wasn't at the time, it wasn't like it wasn't a party drug. It was just, but guys were getting really sick and, and, uh, and addicted to this stuff. There weren't that many of us, and we all kind of kept it hush hush because we didn't want the judges or the officials to know that there's something going on. But I believe there started being a couple guys that passed away, and I think that's when the organization opened up their eyes and maybe we need to look and see what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very fortunate that never, I went in for treatment and it was voluntary. I never had to like, my mom found me, ODing on the bench.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. It was just a choice that I need to get better.
Well, underlying a lot of addiction, depression, anxiety, self-worth issues. I mean, you went to treatment. What else did you discover about yourself in relation to your addiction?
I didn't realize I had all these other things. I never knew what anxiety was. And I felt it the whole time. But bodybuilding, when I competed, it took away my anxiety because it gave me a goal to pursue. But I never knew I had all these things going on with me, like what you said, the anxiety, the pressure, the lack of self-worth. I remember one time someone saying to me, and this is at the height of my bodybuilding career, and he's a dear friend to me to this day, and he became my sponsor. And he said to me, "Co, you need to learn how to love yourself." I didn't realize by doing what I was doing. Of course, I laughed at him, right? I said, "What are you talking about? I'm one of the top guys in the nation." But for me to be doing all those things, and cheating people and, cheating work or meeting with shady people, doing these drugs, I didn't have much worth. I never realized how I didn't have any self-worth.
How did you
And in
discover
addition
that
to,
piece though? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
in addition to add that to when my mom used to think that I was like not attractive or ugly or not smart, because you're throwing your brain away, and it added to all like, wow, I really didn't have much self-worth.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's this buzz phrase lately, like love yourself, right? And
Yeah.
it is a really tough process. And there's one, you compete or competed for a living. And so you are being compared directly to other people. And then
Mhm.
you have at home where your mom is likely comparing you to other people in her mind, that there goes that recipe, right, of a perfect storm. And so I imagine too, like depression and anxiety is very, very common. And at the same time, it is a continual work in process to love yourself, to manage that anxiety and depression. I mean, how do you cope with it now and differently than how you did in the past?
Thank God we live at a different time nowadays because of the epidemics. I still attend like AA meetings
Mhm.
just to stay in touch with people, but you can do Zoom meetings now. You know,
Mhm.
there are apps on the phone where you can like go in a meeting and talk to somebody.
And find
At-
any meeting at this point in the
yes,
rooms is great.
yes. At that time, those resources weren't available. Just to talk to somebody, you try to talk to somebody, well, most of your friends won't understand. A family member isn't gonna understand. Can't you just control it? You
Mhm.
know, which is what I got. But I think the first time uh, I felt like not alone was, you know, when I went to my first AA meeting and realized that, man, everybody has, they don't look, nobody looks like each other, right? We're all variety of people in that room, but
Yeah.
it's like everybody's the same person. We all think alike, and that kind of, you know, that was the beginning of hope for me, knowing that okay, I don't got to hide this anymore,
You're
and
not
I'm not.
alone.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
And remember,
Yeah.
growing up as a kid, I felt alone too. So it'll throw me back to then. It's like, and now like I'm an adult and I'm still alone.
Absolutely. And it's being comfortable with being by yourself and at the same time knowing that connection is so, so important. And you talked about structure because I work with military veterans, and when they transition to civilian life, it's like that structure's not there anymore,
Yes,
right?
yes,
And I think especially for those in recovery, structure is very important in general to have ways to connect to people, working, spending time with family. Because when you're left to your own devices, like some shady stuff goes on.
well, I talked about when I turned professional. I was working full time, third shift, driving trucks, but everything was so structured. I had to get up at this time, make all my meals. I brought my cooler, and you know, the work was like every couple hours I'm eating. I had to get to the gym by this time, you know, before I pick up my kids. Every like there was so much structure in that, and I think I had a better preparation. I did turn professional, and I did compete in a few professional shows. The biggest one being the Mr. Olympia, where I placed seventh.
Mhm.
But going back, remembering I that preparation, I didn't have that structure. Again, I kind of fell back to my, you know, old ways again. And it's like I don't need, you know, okay, I'm not going to go work out today or this or that. I just wasn't as hungry when everything was structured for me. And I guess this is how I am. Left to my own devices. You're right. I'm my own worst enemy. So
Yeah. And I think too, it's a balance because overbooking yourself is also very overwhelming, and feeling like if you drop one of the balls that you're juggling that you're failing. And so I think it is that striking that balance between structure and also having leisure. That's something that's not really talked about out in the general population, that you really do need activities and leisure and spending time with people as part of recovery.
uh-huh, yeah, finding new hobbies and stuff. Well, you mentioned you had some military individuals that they came and they're back in civilization, right? I think I had the same issue when I retired.
Mhm.
Now, keep in mind, I've been competing since I was 19 years old, and I
Yeah.
retired in my late 40s. And I had this network of people, network of friends, right? That's the funny part. Because when I retired, all those friends disappeared.
Mm.
And then the depression really hit. You know, then the depression, uh, it's like, wow, where is this coming from? The phone stopped ringing. People, you know, compliments in the gym because you're not working out like you were, or you may not be bigger. Family events, you know, when's your next show, Uncle? When's your next show? You know, good luck, good luck. And it's like I was just normal, and to I didn't know how to deal with being normal the first year or so.
Mhm. So, how did you reinvent yourself, so to speak, or move towards self development? Because we'll talk a little bit about your autobiography and your documentary, which is kind of another chapter. And then, like you mentioned, you started something completely innovative. But how did you get from feeling that isolation, that depression, and not knowing what's next to then moving towards this new chapter?
Well, I've always stayed in touch with, with someone in the program, or I made sure I saw a therapist regularly. I made sure I had a psychiatrist, to help me with my meds. In the beginning, the very first time you get fixed, right? You're like, wow, this is great. And like, I can do it on my own now. That is the biggest mistake. That was for me, being complacent and thinking that I didn't need this anymore. I can get off the meds. I don't have to go. I stopped going to meetings. I started disconnecting from the things that brought me together. Mm-hmm. And I just having that acceptance that I am not normal. Now, I'm not a bad person or a freak or anything. My brain doesn't work like a normal person. And for the longest time, I used to beat myself up and again, think like I'm not good enough, or I'm such a, I'd call myself the black sheep of the family, for the longest time. And it wasn't until then, like, you realize, no, your brain works, and this is through years of therapy. And, there's nothing wrong with you. You have just your brain works differently.
Yeah. And recovery is a lifelong process.
Yes.
And
Yes, you don't graduate.
Right. And so I think a lot of people, not just for addiction, but many things, they look for that quick fix, as you said. And, normal is so subjective, because just to normalize it in general is that people go through sadness and worry. And it's just when it's to the extreme where it is impacting your functioning in your life is really where a lot of people seek help and have more major issues in various areas of their lives. But I think for those that do really well and continue their recovery, they see kind of the more fruits of their labor and their dedication, because they're keeping these safeguards in place so that they can live a healthy life.
Yes. Yes.
Can you tell us more about the exciting things that you have done, and really emphasizing that you've done a lot of work on yourself in order to get to this point?
Oh, were you talking about like the Hall of Fame, or were you talking about
Autobiography, documentary?
I never knew how therapeutical that was. Like the documentary, I had some people approached me about it, and then we did it, and that was, that took me to like 2016. I didn't realize, again, how, gosh, I guess I'll say it. We had a big falling out with the group, and just people just like a certain individual saw like the money in me. They saw dollar signs. And when I felt that, I felt like, geez, I'm more than that. I'm more than this whatever money maker for you. And that's why I wrote the autobiography, I Am Put the Phone, because I am Put Phone's that kid, that 4-year-old kid in the cover standing outside Laos with a big smile. And that's all I really, truly, we always want to be that younger, happier, innocent version of ourselves, right? So with the documentary, it went to some film festivals, we actually won one award in Thailand. So it was successful, but it wasn't like we were all button heads. And one person wanted to do this, one person wanted to do this, one person wanted to do this. While me, I'm just like, guys, you're like, it got me depressed, because you're putting my story and you're just putting it on the shelf for now. What are we doing? Like, let's do something with it. So for that, I started speaking at colleges. I took the film and I approached colleges, junior colleges, and says, hey, listen, I want to present to you my documentary, and it's a 30-minute documentary. And then I want to have an open Q&A afterwards. And that format seemed to work. It was like, I get up, introduce me 5 minutes or so, and then we play the film, and then we'd have a Q&A. And I was doing that live, in person in colleges, but I also did a couple that were Zoom, where we just got the Zoom group together, and they played the video through Zoom, and then we'd have our Q&A after. So I was at least taking that part of the film and at least doing something with it for me.
Yeah.
We still haven't agreed on what platform, is it going to be on Netflix? Is it going to be on Amazon? Like it's right now that's out of my hands, but for the part that I can take care of, I went ahead and started, promoting myself to junior colleges, universities. And now with COVID being done, I'm hopefully, I'll start sending out like letters or emails to colleges again to see if they want to do something for the fall season.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's AAPI Heritage Month in May. And while we celebrate our heritage all of our lives, I think it may be a good segue into really showcasing some of these things. But I think the important part that you said is you're taking autonomy and some ownership in distributing your story. And I think that's very important to you to have some sense of control over that.
Mm-hmm.
So the other exciting thing is your podcast and the Hall of Fame that you've created. Tell me more about what your thoughts are and motivation to starting that for younger folks.
So the Hall of Fame, my partner, co-founder, John Messina, he's Italian. He was telling me about, in Chicago, there's this big Italian Hall of Fame where, there's information on this person or that person. And John's wife is Laotian. So his kids are half, half Laotian, half white. And they're into sports. And he's like, I don't know of any professional bodybuilders that are from Laos, And I was like, at first I was like, sure, I never saw myself again, and this could be the self-doubt talk, but I never saw myself as like a Hall of Famer. But I was really excited about seeing who can we find that's out there that's doing this or that. I mean, we found a professional bull rider, we found mixed martial artists, we found a ton of football players, gymnasts, and like it's created an excitement, and it's like, wow, we're giving recognition to some of these people that may not have, maybe didn't get their recognition. And again, being from Laos, being from a small country, most people don't know where we are on the map. I think there was a soccer game in South Asian Games like a few months ago, and like Laos beat Malaysia, and the headline was Malaysia gets beat by lowly Laos, right?
Oh, wow.
So it's like whenever, I just want to let our people have, get some respect, right? So, but more importantly, I created, we call it C4, like C4 the bomb. So SEA 4. So that stands for Southeast Asian Athlete Achievement Through Adversity. With this, I wanted to hear the stories. So it's great enough to put a post about and write a quick story about, let's say about me. Okay, that's nice and all, and I'm in a Hall of Fame, and that's great. But I wanted to tell my story, and I want to hear other people's stories, right? I mean, as an athlete, you can only do so much. Like I think as an athlete, as a bodybuilder, okay, I won this title, I turned professional, and people say, wow, you look great, or you inspire me. But the one that really touches my heart is when someone says, I saw your documentary and I was really down, and that story really gives me motivation. And it's coming from a younger generation, right? Because the older generation, they're old school. They're set on their ways. They don't believe, don't cry, don't talk about your feelings or this or that. And I think we're never gonna, get anywhere with that type of thinking of, right? So maybe with the newer generation, the younger generation coming up and understanding mental health, understanding depression, talking about it, I think that would be, that would be where we finally start making some way. So,
well, there's so many points there, which is you want to provide or facilitate hope and inspiration. And
yes.
the other part is going full circle, targeting that secrecy about struggles about mental health, because, you know, mental health is such an important aspect of health. And I think we see it a lot among athletes that may not be as vocal about it, but self-doubt, and when you're maybe not performing as well, and you get, especially when you get at the professional stage and you're getting hecklers and people saying
Yeah,
racist things, it's
yeah.
like there's athletes are still human. And so when they hear those kinds of things and possibly internalize it, that could be huge in terms of their game, their ability to perform their craft.
And again, like, how are they coping with it? Are they turning to this substance, at that level, and where, money is abundant,
Mm-hmm.
you can cope in,
You
many
can
different
get
ways.
anything you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, the access is there. Well, I think again, you even being here breaks down barriers, because we are talking about addiction, depression, anxiety, and kind of how to break down those barriers. And I think that's why it's so important to tell your story and to tell stories that have these components to them, because people see the Instagram images, the social media and all that, but
Mhm.
there are always stories behind those images, and it's not all curated. Life isn't curated the way that it's shown out in public.
You know what? Being older, I'll say this: there's nothing better than the truth, right? And then it's just, you have to be honest with yourself, and that truth is, it gives you that freedom. Like, again, the time when I was addicted to drugs and had to keep it a secret, I had to remember stories. I had to remember where I went yesterday, where I went last week.
Mm-hmm.
What story am I going to give this guy? And now it's like, with honesty, I don't have to think, because what I'm telling you is what happens. There's no make up this or make up that. I just felt like it was so much stress trying to be this other person, and trying to be like trying to be okay. And I think that's something that in the Asian culture, you never get that question, like, especially from my parents. It was never, "Are you okay?" And
Or
it's
how are
just,
you feeling?
yeah, how are you? How are you feeling? Because
Mm-hmm.
we never talked about our feelings. First funeral, my nephew passed away. I was 18 years old. First thing my dad tells me: "Don't cry." That was my first experience with death. Don't cry. So when my dad passed, I still didn't cry. I just didn't know how to. And I thought there was something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't cry. So,
Powerful message that's told, which is within don't cry. It's like, don't show your emotions to anyone.
mhm.
Don't grieve, don't be sad. And that, even though it seems ridiculous when you say it out loud, it's all bundled into that saying.
Yeah. But
So
it is our culture, though. I mean, all of Asia, we have that. The man provides, the woman is at home, and uh, never talk to anybody about your problems, and just keep it to yourself, because everybody else is going through it. And like, well, why can't we go through it together? Why can't we help each other? Why can't we lift each other up, and saying, instead of not telling you this and not telling you that, you don't tell me nothing, and we just go through life like there's nothing wrong.
yeah. Well, it's also about building community, right? And finding people that are brave enough like yourself to shed some light on these situations. And really, once people start talking about it more people will eventually talk about it in public, and it'll become part of normal conversation. And like I said on someone else's podcast, it's like, if someone has cancer, you're not going to tell them, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong with you?"
Yeah,
At least
don't talk
even with,
about it.
right, social convention anyways, people aren't going to say like, "What did you do with your life? Like, what are you doing wrong?"
Mm.
And so I think if we kind of had that parallel with mental health, it would greatly help to not blame people for some of the things that they're going through.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
more understanding, more understanding,
yeah.
more unity, trying to get along, getting along with others. It was always, you grow up in the Asian household, it was always about prestige, right? Like, what, who is here, which family's here, which family's there, and don't you disgrace our family. And I think that was one of my mother's fears, was it was gonna, everybody else is an engineer and her kid is, a guy that stands on the stage, flexing his muscles. So I'm sure that, probably bothered her a lot. What are they gonna think? What are they gonna think?
Right.
And all I wanted from her is, well, I don't care what they think. I care about what you think. And when you're telling me I'm not smart enough, or you're not telling me I'm not attractive, that really hurts me. Yeah. When you never tell me you love me, that bothers me. But you're more concerned with the, external world. But it's got to be that time. It's got to be the time when she was raised, growing up as a kid. Maybe it was, I'm sure it was a lot different back then.
Absolutely. Well, the fear of judgment and loss of face is a huge motivator to the secrecy piece, right? So I think as we are both parents, like, just really encouraging a different, to break that cycle, as you put it, and to send a different message to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So tell our listeners, our viewers, where can people continue to connect with you and support your mission and your meaning?
Well, I'm at Coach Chandetka on Facebook, which is KO. And then my last name is Chandetka, exactly how it sounds, CHANDTKA. I'm on Instagram at Coach Chandetka. We also have the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame. That's on Facebook. And on IG, it's Lao American Sports. And then the C4 podcast is also on Facebook. I believe it's on Apple, Spotify, and a couple other. We're just wrapping up our 10th episode. So we're trying to get it to grow, and I'm trying to get people out there to tell their stories. But I tell you, some of these stories, especially the ones that where, the kids are coming from war, and it brought tears to my eyes, losing family members, or, not knowing the day you were born. I don't know. I thought that was that's a given, right?
No. What's a key indicator is when someone's birthday says January 1st. There's a lot of people, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you, Ko, so much for taking the time. The hour has flown by, and wow, you just inspire me. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. And I want to say, I love what you do, and bringing awareness to, the Asian community about mental health. We need more people. And, I would have studied psychology if they would have given me a chance, like in college, but it's kind of like either engineering or that's that. Well, I'm just going to do bodybuilding. But if they had, met me in the middle, because I was always been interested in psychology. Well, I could have studied psychology. I think that would have been a better choice for me, looking back.
Well, it's never too late, and we need more addiction therapists and counselors. So,
and you got to walk the walk, right? You got to
some of my best teachers were addiction therapists and health techs. And it was so funny because you come from this very theoretical academic background, and then you have your health tech friends being like, no, you're bullshit. And you're like, when you're saying to the patients, and you're like, wow, you can say that? But there's a lot of meaning working together in the field with people who have lived experience, and you're saying it one way, they're saying it another way, and it just merges the worlds together, and people can hear it in different ways.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Ko. I appreciate you, and I'm sure we're going to continue to be friends and support each other's platforms.
All right, looking forward to it.